What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Jason Momoa film, Aquaman. Aquaman is directed by James Wan, stars Jason Momoa, Amber Heard, Willem Dafoe, Dolph Lundgren, and Patrick Wilson. It tells the story of Arthur Curry, the Aquaman, played by Jason Momoa, who we saw in the Justice League. In this film, he is now known to the world as Aquaman. He saves people from pirates out in the ocean and things like that. But when a certain person from Atlantis comes back and his more or less past begins to haunt him, as his mother was a former queen of Atlantis, so that means he's technically an heir to the throne, he is forced to go down and confront his brother Orm, who is trying to start a war with the land, as he is the current king of Atlantis. James Wan, I think, is genuinely one of the most talented people in Hollywood right now. I won't be surprised if 5 to 10 years from now we see him winning big awards at award ceremonies and things like that, because he makes very, very good films, and he's honestly just an extremely talented director who has been able to handle everything that he's been given up until this point in his career. And I think that this film is no different. Aquaman is by far the best directed movie thus far in the DC universe. I think he does a fantastic job with the massive scope of the film. This is an extremely CGI heavy film, and I think that the CGI in the film is absolutely breathtaking. It's all done extremely well. It is some of the best that I've ever seen in a movie, but I think James Wan's direction is why it works so well. He's able to capture the scope without making the film feel like just some big spectacle like an Avatar, where in Avatar the plot is non-existent, it's just generic and bland. It's Pocahontas with blue people, but the special effects are extremely impressive, where this film actually decides to focus on its characters and its story, and the spectacle of all of these massive impressive special effects is just an addition to that. His long takes and the action sequences are absolutely gorgeous, along with his extremely skilled hand when it comes to suspense and horror. Obviously this film doesn't have any like horror scenes in it, but it does have some very suspenseful sequences, and I think if it would have been someone other than James Wan, they could have been very cheesy, but he knows how to handle it and film it in a manner that it actually feels somewhat intense when you're watching it. The performances in the film are all really solid. I think that the casting was pretty spot on with this. Jason Momoa makes Aquaman feel like this big badass character, and he's very fitting in the role. He brings a nice comic relief because he sort of jokes around about the whole scenario that he's in, while at the same time being aware of the serious consequences of it. But I think, as odd as it is and was as surprising as it was, Patrick Wilson as Ocean Master in this movie is one of the best things about it. He plays the villain, obviously. It's Aquaman's brother, and he is trying to start this war. But Patrick Wilson, I was extremely impressed by. I've always liked Patrick Wilson. I think he's a really talented actor who gets overlooked a lot, but he was so good in this role. I think he's one of the best villains we've gotten in a superhero movie in a long time. I'm not saying he's better than like Thanos or something like that, but I'm just saying I think a lot of superhero movies get very bland milquetoast villains, and I felt like his character's motivation was so clear and you understood where he was coming from, that while you couldn't root for him because what he wanted to do was horrible, you completely understood it, and that's the sign of a great villain. The story makes sense, you understand every single character's motivations, and I think that the script also does a good job to enhance the characters so that way they begin to grow more throughout the course of the film, so when we see them in future films, they are continuing to grow as characters and change as people, even if the script does have some issues. And then I know I did mention it earlier, but the action in this movie is so good. It's extremely well choreographed. Every single fight scene, whether it's with the tridents or hand-to-hand combat or when it's Black Manta or whatever it is all done really well. And like I said, James Wan utilizes a very fluid camera in these scenes and has a lot of very long takes that are just gorgeous to watch. And it's some of the best action in the whole DC universe, obviously. I'd say the only sequences of fighting that can even really compare to it is the warehouse scene from Batman v Superman, because that one's extremely well choreographed as well and very fluid. But I think every single action sequence in this film feels like that and does a fantastic job. The movie is honestly just a ton of fun. Now, I have two main issues with the film, and the first is the pacing. The beginning gives you sort of the exposition. We learn about Arthur's birth, where he came from, who he was raised to be, that kind of thing. But once the actual story starts with Jason Momoa, it starts pretty high octane. We get some awesome action, we get cool things, we meet new characters. All of this stuff is going on, and it works really well for the first beginning, maybe like 45 minutes to an hour of the movie, but the movie's about 2.5 hours long. And then about partway through, we start to get all of these flashbacks and different people like that are side characters. We get the camera focused in on them in certain scenes, and it showcases a lot of stuff that feels less pertinent to the story than what we could be seeing. And because of that, the film slows down. We don't have as many action sequences, and even though the dialogue's really interesting and the performances are all good, we're seeing things that don't feel that important to the story. So even if it's well performed, it feels like what I'm seeing doesn't need to be here at all. It could have been trimmed out, or we could have had an extended version of another scene, or this or that, but it just feels like there are a lot of scenes in this film that feel somewhat unnecessary or feel overly long. And then my biggest issue, which I will preface by saying I understand the film is based on the Aquaman comics and they want to stay, true to those comics. But every single superhero film, it does not matter what it is, has to change certain things to fit with the modern era or to fit with, the way people watch films or what has been done 1,000 times before. And I think that's the big issue with the film. This movie has so many insanely cheesy and overdone cliche lines and cliche moments that it is just unacceptable. It's to the point where it's like, that everyone ever has seen this specific scene or this specific moment time and time again in film, and that just because it's from the comics, you can still change it and people won't care as long as it is a good rendition of the story you are trying to tell. But instead, they decided to stick to those old cliches and those moments that we all know what's going to happen because they're so predictable, and it was really upsetting to see that because I had a lot of fun with this movie, and I think it was a honestly really solid DC film. I'm happy it's successful. I want to see a sequel. I really loved Jason Momoa in the movie. Black Manta was awesome. I loved Patrick Wilson, but I just felt like the script could have been improved so much if they would have just moved away from those generic cliches that everyone has seen so many times in film and instead tried even just a little bit to be a little more imaginative in the way that they told certain character stories. I'm gonna give Aquaman a B. Like I said, I had a ton of fun with this film. I think it's really, really well casted, and all the performances are solid. It has really great action. It's extremely well directed. If it wasn't for the fact that the script I feel is a little lackluster in some points, the film would have gotten a higher grade. But overall, I think anyone can go to this movie and have a good time. You're not going to be blown away by it, but you will definitely have a ton of fun in the theater watching it. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Aquaman, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and hope to see you guys later.